Hello, 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 and welcome. Now, today I'm going to be talking about how to master your craft. And before I continue, just in case you don't know me, I'm going to quickly introduce myself, okay? So, my name is Nina Dafe, and I'm the founder and the editor of FarAboveRubiesCollection.com, where I basically help Christian women to know their worth, their power, and their purpose so that they may speak up, step out, and shine as the awesome women of God that He created them to be. All right. Now, before I jump into this, I think this is going to be quite short and sweet, to be honest. But also, I guess what got me kind of thinking about, how to master your craft was because obviously going in chronological order, in terms of the Bible, the next woman that we are going to be reading about is Keturah. So she has definitely inspired my thinking, but also some of the events of this week and some of the I guess feelings that I've also had are playing into like how I kind of came to thinking in this way. So jumping into all of that, where I'm reading from today is Genesis 25, and it will be verses let's do 1 to 4. Okay, so it says Abraham again took a wife, and her name was Keturah, because if you remember, Sarah's died now, right? And she bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan begot Sheba and Dedan, and the sons of Dedan were Asherim, Letushim, and Lumim. And the sons of Midian were Ephah, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah. Okay. By the way, welcome to you guys who have just joined in. Let me know who you are. Let's make this all interactive as usual. But yeah, I found it really interesting reading that particular part of the Bible. I think because most people don't know that actually Abraham kind of had more than one wife. Well, to be fair, Abraham had more than one wife and a few concubines. Okay, but that's by the by. So most people tend to think about Sarah. When we hear about who Abraham was married to, she's kind of first woman that comes to mind. And I think it's also particularly because of how much the Bible refers to her and commends her, as I've read before in Hebrews, because of her faith, and how, they're both of them being in such old age, her being infertile, him kind of, no longer having certain things working anymore. Like, it's a real miracle and it's a real demonstration of God's power, which is the reason why I believe He chose Abraham and Sarah to be the mother and father of nations. And yet, we see that it was such a struggle, when God basically gave Abraham the whole revelation on multiple occasions that he was going to be the father of nations. We've just read through in the last few weeks how much of a struggle it was and how many years they waited just to have the one promised child by Sarah, who we now know was Isaac, right? And yet here comes Keturah and has 6 whole kids for Abraham. And I think that there are several learning points that we can take from this. So in no particular order, because honestly, this week I don't actually have notes, but I'll get onto that. But I think the first thing that we can really take away from this is actually, I'm going to read you a quote by one of my favorite authors and personalities out there, Robin Sharma. And it basically says, all change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and so gorgeous at the end. And I thought that was really interesting because, a lot of the times God gives us the kind of revelation of our purpose. He gives us goals and dreams, something to work towards. But as we see, in the story of Abraham, with his first wife, Sarah, like, he had this whole vision that was given to him by God of being the father of nations, and yet by natural terms or earthly terms, he actually wasn't qualified as that person. As I mentioned, he was very advanced in age. And not only that, like I said, certain things, he wasn't as virile, as he was before, and also Sarah herself, she'd already gone through menopause and all of that sort of stuff. And so, they didn't seem actually qualified to actually see this vision through. And in the natural, it actually looked impossible. And I think that a lot of the times when God kind of gives us the revelation of our goals and the revelation of our dreams, it can be the same. Like, as an example, if I talk about myself, when I got the whole idea about the Far Above Rubies collection, anybody who knows me at that time knows that I was not a particularly techie person. I still don't really consider myself to be. I didn't know how I was going to get all these interviews with different ladies. I actually didn't know at the time I even had, a talent for writing devotionals or anything like that. But there was that small seed that was planted. And yes, I was afraid of kind of embarrassment. I was afraid of doing a shoddy job. I didn't have all the skills, and there were things that I had to learn. And I absolutely was not perfect in the beginning. I designed my own website, and even at the beginning of the year, I had to revamp everything again in order to make it look, just that little bit more professional. But at the very same time, what is important is that I trusted God enough to get started, just like Abraham and Sarah did in the very, very beginning. And I think that sometimes what ends up happening is that we get so stuck on that, beginning part of Robin Sharma's quote, right? Of things being hard, of the mess that's going to be in the middle. We're afraid of making mistakes. We're afraid of embarrassing ourselves when we're learning the new skills, and, things not being as perfect as they could be, or other people's judgment and all of that sort of jazz. But we need to know that it's always hard in the beginning, messy in the middle, but also gorgeous in the end. And I feel like the two women in Abraham's life really represent that. Like, Sarah was the beginning. Sarah was the point where things weren't perfect. The circumstances were not well aligned, and they had to kind of work together and travail in faith in order to, like I said, even bear the promised child. And then we get to point B, which is like the walking in the promise, the gorgeous part. And I find it so interesting. This kind of brings me on to my second point, that it was such a fight to get Isaac, and obviously we know how Satan, the devil, works. At the end of the day, when he knows that something is of God, that there is a promise of God that's not just gonna, kind of bless us, but generations to come, he's always going to try and block it. He's always going to try and put a spanner in the works. And of course, we know that that's what he tried to do with Abraham and Sarah, but I find it so, so interesting that, when God gave Abraham the whole promise of being a father of nations, I can imagine that because it was so difficult to conceive even the one child in Isaac, that at the time he was just desperate for the one. Lord, just give me the one child. I want to see the promise come to pass. Please just let it happen. I'm sure there was a point in Abraham and Sarah's life where actually they couldn't have even fathomed, having more than one child. And yet here comes Keturah, who brings about 6, right? And what I took that as a lesson of was that sometimes we think too small. So once again, thinking about the Far Above Rubies, I think anyone who knows the story knows that I basically started this platform because I saw that there was a problem. That we don't talk about the women of the Bible enough. We don't talk about females and our empowerment aside from men, in the body of Christ enough. And I also had the hunger and thirst for a community of women who love God, have a relationship with him, but also accept the reality that we are also his children, sent here to do exploits, full of purpose, and not just our male counterparts, right? And so for me, when I was in the middle of learning all of the tech and, getting to learn all the skills that would even allow me to launch, that's all I had in my mind. It was just, okay, Lord, let me launch this blog, just please help me to do this in a way that it's gonna kind of edify you, and I don't end up embarrassing myself. And yet years later, the Far Above Ruby's collection has turned into, you know, not just this one thing in being a blog, but this whole umbrella thing in being, you know, a way to mentor people, you know, in having even social media platforms outside of the website. I've written on other websites and other sites, you know, doing interviews with other, you know, women who are also Christian entrepreneurs, and etc., etc. All of the mentoring, the one-to-one sessions. And so I'm saying all of that to say, just like Abraham may have done, just like I was at the time, I think we can sometimes get stuck on, I just want to reach the next level. You know, I just want to launch. I just want to have the one child. And actually, God is almost, I feel, saying through this story of Keturah that we're thinking too small. Like, we see the tip of the iceberg. You know, we see, you know, the one idea for a business that we want to start, for example, you know, and he's probably saying that, okay, but this is just the beginning. There's going to be multiple income streams, you know, you're going to diversify and go into lots of different areas, for example. And so I really took this story of Keturah and her 6 children, you know, that Abraham went on to have through her, as just a sign that we need to broaden and open up our minds, and really allow God to kind of broaden our horizons. Because, you know, as Proverbs 23:7 says, as a man or woman thinketh, so are they, so is he, so is she, right? And we are never going to rise above the level of our thoughts. And so if our thoughts are kind of substandard, you know, lower than God's, because the Bible also says that our thoughts are not his thoughts, our ways are not his ways, then we need to, in our prayer, in our declarations, in our affirmations, make sure that we are working to get to a point where we are, you know, having our downloads, getting divine revelations, where our thoughts, you know, are no longer separate from God, but you know, we can, you know, how Jesus said, not my will, but yours be done. But you can only do God's will if you've got a revelation of his will. You know, you can only get that higher level of grace working in your life if you come into alignment and agreement with that. And so it's really, really important that we don't just get stuck on the basics in life, you know, paying the next bill, you know what I mean? Just the day to day, or, you know, just, I don't know, the next step in launching our vision, or whatever the case may be, but keeping the bigger picture always, always, always in mind. Okay. I hope all of this is making sense so far. So basically, just to recap, number 1 was really just about expecting the fact that, yes, a lot of the times when God tells us what to do in terms of our purpose, in terms of giving us a vision, we're not always going to have the skills there. You know, we're going to have to master our craft. But, you know, from getting to being an amateur to being a master, yes, expect the embarrassment. Do you know what I mean? Yes, expect that you're not going to be good, you know, straight away. But if you keep going, you will eventually get there. Okay. So don't let that fear of failure, messing up, you know, perfectionism stop you from taking consistent action to actually become that master. And number 2 is broadening your horizons, not thinking too small, getting around a circle of people, for example, who are where it is that you want to go, so that you can see and be exposed to what is possible for yourself. Okay. I think that number 3, in terms of Keturah, and the thing that really kind of struck me about her is, as I, you know, was saying in the beginning, she had 6 children for Abraham, and yet it is Sarah, his first wife, who had the one child for him, that we hear the most about, that we talk the most about, and that is the most well known, right? I really think that it kind of reinforces a lot of the biblical principles that talk about the first shall be last and the last shall be first, and that if you want to be great in God's kingdom, you must first be a servant, etc., etc. Because I think that, you know, when we think in terms of man's thinking, we look at like the quantity. You know, we would look at 6 and go, oh my gosh, yes, you know, Keturah, look at her. You know, Abraham got the whole revelation that he was going to be the father of nations, and boom, she bore him 6 children. You know, clearly she was the expression of that prophecy. And yet she wasn't. It was Sarah who had the one child that was. And so what I'm saying here is, don't give in to things like comparisonitis, which is essentially looking at other people and what they've got and what they're doing and how far ahead they are, and you know how much they seem to be a master, you know, especially in this world of social media, you know, where people show their highlight reel and we're not seeing the struggle in the background. Do you know what I mean? Like, it can be very, very easy to then become down on yourself and beat yourself up. But the Bible makes it very clear that with God, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. Okay, like Sarah is the one with her one child that brought about the promise. And so I want to say to you guys that with God, you are still a majority, and that with God, He takes our little and He makes it much. So don't despise the day of small beginnings. Don't despise, you know, those days where you're still learning, you know, and you know you're still making mistakes and it's still hard and it's still messy, etc., etc., because all of those things are the building blocks and the foundations to actually getting you to, I want to say, masterhood. But you know what I mean? To actually being a master. And the reason why I can say that, you know, is, you know, let me not be a hypocrite. You know, I'm sure that you guys who pay attention, you know, to me and what I normally do in my lives know that it's very unusual for me to do a live on a Saturday, which for you watching the replay, it's a Saturday as I record this, okay? Normally, I'm like, what, midweek, a Wednesday, typically a Thursday, doing my recordings. I have to be honest, this is what I was referring to in the beginning of the video, about talking about some of the events of this week and how it kind of you know, helped me to formulate some of what I wanted to talk about and why I don't have notes. Because this has been a really long week for me. And it was one of those weeks where I just really, really felt like I lost my mojo. And so come the time where, you know, I was supposed to be doing my live as normal, blah, 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 da, 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 da. You know, I'd read the scripture and everything, but I felt so totally depleted, felt so much like I was running on empty, that, to be honest with you, I didn't have any inspiration. Even like I because I was going to be so busy yesterday, I said, okay, let me make sure that I at least post on Saturday. The time of my recording right now, it's about just past 8:30. So really and truly, I started this live just after 8 o'clock in the evening. I've had the whole day to grab my laptop, you know what I mean, and get everything ready and talk to you guys. But even to just before I got on this live, I was still feeling totally uninspired. Do you know what I've been doing all day? Apart from sleeping, I have been binging on YouTube, funny videos on Facebook, you know, blah, blah, blah. Almost, to be honest with you, refusing to be productive and refusing to work because I was still feeling extremely, extremely uninspired. Do you know what I'm saying? And then I kind of felt to myself, do you know what? Confession is good for the soul. I haven't spoken to you guys, you know, and yes, I come on here every week and I try to be a force of positivity, I try to be a source of light. But I think sometimes we can mistake being a force of positivity and a source of light to always being all singing and all dancing. And the fact of the matter is the path to mastery, the path to attaining your vision, your goals, and your dreams, it is not always paved with gold. It doesn't always feel good. You won't always feel motivated or inspired or feel like you're really operating at your best or really in tune with your mojo, etc., etc. And I can hand on heart say that to you because that was how I was feeling this week. And so I'm saying all of that to say that in your path to mastering your craft and becoming the woman that God created you to be, have some grace for yourself. So not only knowing that it's going to be hard in the beginning, messy in the middle, but gorgeous in the end, etc., etc. Allow for the times, allow yourself to feel tired. Allow yourself to feel a bit weary. Allow yourself to feel overwhelmed or demotivated or whatever the case may be. And take a little time, because the fact of the matter is, when you're building something great, when you're trying to do something unique and positive, good for the Lord, manifesting those dreams, etc., etc. If you're in the business of serving other people, as I say all the time, you cannot serve from an empty cup. And so I very much had to kind of step back, replenish myself in God, do the stuff that I do to relax and that makes me happy, and then come back to you guys. But that also, just the nature of our relationship, I'm always very, very honest with you guys as well. And so I had to let you know that in and amongst talking about, how to master your craft and couture and the 2 seasons of Abraham's life, from the struggle to the, abundance, etc., etc., just knowing that as much as we tend to overrepresent in our society, I talked about social media and stuff, the highlight reel and the romanticization of purpose and stuff. I wanted to be honest and real in saying to you, listen, if you're finding it hard to cope at the moment, frustrating even, wanting to cry, whatever the case may be, like, you're not weird. The people that you're probably idolizing, have gone through it, probably even going through it now, but you don't know that because you just see them smiling, So this is just my way of, sharing the message that God gave to me literally about an hour or so ago. Also being real about where it came from, because, hey, the fact of the matter is that light shines in darkness too, right? Light shines in darkness too. And so there's no shame in my game in letting you know where I was or how I was feeling, because His grace is sufficient. I still made it in front of the camera. He is still speaking through me, notes or no notes, etc., etc. And it's all for His glory and for your edification. And for that, I really, really thank you. Thank you, Lord. So guys, that's all I've got for you today. I hope that blessed you. I hope that you were able to make the sense and out of it, and that there wasn't too much nonsense in it. And if you enjoyed this video, then like it. If you can think of someone else who needs to hear it, then share it. Let me know what your biggest takeaways were in the comments. And of course, I will circle back and interact with you guys as I always do. And even in line with this subject that I talked about, You know, at the time of this recording, on my social media and emails, I've been doing a lot of talking to you guys, you know, just kind of collecting information about what you guys are finding difficult at the moment, what you would want to hear in terms of devotionals, the topics you're interested in, etc., etc. And actually, funnily enough, a lot of what I have spoken about, you know, going through this week, you guys have also flagged up in terms of procrastination, overwhelm, you know, fear, etc., etc., etc. And so I'm really excited to say that next week I am going to be excuse me guys, sharing with you, you know, what it is that I have been putting together behind the scenes to actually basically help us as a community, you know. So anyway, that's enough from me. I've spoken a lot already, and here was me saying at the beginning this is not going to be long, so I'm going to leave it there and we will talk again next week. All right, take care guys, bye.